Hello and welcome to the Great White North, your destination for the iciest cold takes from the frozen wastelands of the North. I'm your host, Charles Constantine, and with me is NP. Say hello, NP.
Hello.
What's going on this week?
I picked up some work, unfortunately, so now I'm
Oh, that
dreading
sucks.
going to do that. Yeah, I was really enjoying not working, but I also enjoy having money, so it's the horrible.
Yeah, that's the balance. I always find though, in my opinion, getting some good hard work in for a bit and then having some time off, like that's the ideal. I'm not really a fan of just grinding, and I don't mean like time off in 2 weeks. I mean like time off in like a month or a month of doing limited, maybe you get 10 hours in 1 week, 20 hours in another week. That's how I like to roll. That's what I've found is pretty effective personally.
Yeah. I'm just out of my groove. Once I go do a few days, it'll be all right.
Yeah, that's fair.
I've been following some of these like anti-wagey kind of chats on Telegram,
Oh yeah.
talking about raiding the food bank and stuff. I'm like, tempting.
Well, you don't have to. I mean, like I would say the food bank. I would I would call that a bridge too far because there's some people that really do need food. But I would say any government assistance that you qualify for, I don't see any issue with taking up their offers
I'm not
as long as you
even
qualify for it.
Yeah, I'm not even close to being desperate like that, but yeah, you should always get back whatever tax money you can whenever you can.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with using the system, and again, if you fall under uh, fall under the ability to get it, it's not like it's immoral to take it. Like,
I could
hey,
I could probably qualify as disabled at this point. I'll just show them my chat history.
that might be a little risky, but I think they would give it to you.
Ah, so you've got a few topics on the list today, and it seems like they're all bound together by one common thread. So we're calling this the Charles is angry episode.
Yeah, you could say that. There's definitely one or two topics that got my well, I don't know, got my chimp out mode going.
Jimmy's wrestled.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Not all of them though. Like just a few. One in particular. We'll get in that one later. But the first thing, and again, I'm not sure how angry I really am. It's just more we're just talking about realities of things, and um, but it's all this crime stuff, and obviously, yeah, we have the crime. We just understand that if you're kind of in this sphere, or maybe it's your first time listening to a show like this, and you're kind of out of it. But yeah, we talk about certain crime, maybe certain demographics, or maybe it's just stuff that comes from a lack of an ability to recognize problems where they are. Even if it isn't a certain demographic, it's still a permissiveness and um, a sort of inability to enact justice in any way, right? Like Canada, obviously, you can't really defend yourself from an attacker, but our state or government doesn't really do much to protect you in the first place. And we have seen a big increase, especially post COVID, of all kinds of events. I mean, just here in my city, we had a stabbing, a murder, a guy freaking out, locked down a whole chunk of the city. I think it was last Wednesday, and that was on the same day that there was a shooting spree in the states. A black guy
Is that the
ran
Memphis one?
around on live stream executing people. Sorry,
White people.
he executed white people on live stream, and that one was obviously that was covered up. The event in here,
Mm-hmm.
that was a white guy that seemed to be a kind of a troubled. I'm not sure, like looked like a meth head, younger meth head kind of guy. Um, as far as I know, in both instances, and then also we had the Saskatchewan stabbings, on the reservations, just a couple days before that. And one common thing threading these together is that all of the people involved were either in the radar on the radar of law enforcement, or had already been arrested or taken up on charges for other similar violent acts previously. Like I think the natives in Saskatchewan that committed that stabbing spree,
He had, he had
one of the
something
guys
like
had been
30
charged for
priors or
attempted
something.
murder of one of the people that he ended up killing in that spree, and he was still out running around, right?
Oh, wow.
And it was the same thing with this black guy in the States. He had already been charged with attempted murder, as far as I know. And he had these, again, violent assault charges against him, and he was still free to go. And this is this sort of permissiveness. That's the word I want. Surrounding uh, these types of people, these violent offenders, and this is causing concern among the general population. Like, it's not just us that is wary of this now. I'm talking to coworkers, I'm talking to family members that see very clearly in these events that they hear about that these people should have been in prison previously. Like, my coworkers know everything about that native stabbing. They knew all about how these guys should have already been in prison beforehand. They were already on the radar, and they're mad. They're angry that this kind of thing is just allowed to fly by. And this is all paired with, I'm sure you see it in many cities, an increase in the recklessness of your sort of homeless crackhead demographic,
Yes.
because they're not being policed, really. I've personal experiences where these guys will be like lighting fires in a field. They'll pull a crack pipe and they'll smoke right in front of you. I've seen this firsthand. Smoke a crack pipe right in front of you. You tell them, hey, you can't start fires here. We'll call the police on you. The guy will just be like, what's a police officer going to do? Like, they don't worry about me. They pick me up and I go back out. I don't care. Give me a free meal and then I'm back on the streets. At most, they get like 6 months and then they're back out there again. So there's an inability to enact any sort of justice and provide any sort of protection for the citizens. And like I said, the general population is recognizing this. My family member of mine was just talking about how much worse getting to a restaurant downtown was, how much more drug addicts on the street she encountered than she ever has in her life before. The friends that she was meeting told her, hey, don't go down this one staircase. You need to take the other route to get to the restaurant. And these people want to know what is going on? Why is it like this? And what can we do?
Yeah. Well, why is it like that?
Well, number one, we see, and we've talked about this before, this inability to allow anyone to resist evil by force. And we kind of talked about this topic a couple episodes back on about the Ivan
Alien.
Ilin. But again, we already touched on this a little earlier, but you can't defend yourself. And if you go out of your way to try and stop some crime from happening, you put yourself in the sights of the law and you get convicted.
Quite quickly.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's the one thing they're very effective at, is dealing with peaceful middle class people.
So they won't give you that, but they also won't protect you. And I think part of it too, we can see is pretty clearly that they don't really want to be pumping out convictions for certain protected classes, the victim classes. They give these groups as many chances as possible, bail them out as often as possible because of these sort of liberal notions of justice that we see prevailing.
Well,
right?
like, if you have 30 convictions,
yeah,
at what point should you just be hanged? Like, maybe 3 strikes you're out maybe that's too much. I don't know.
Well, and this is something, I mean, that kind of behavior, there's some genetic element to it, right? And
yeah.
I think Dutton, Edward Dutton has talked a little bit about how the execution of violent criminals in Europe, you know, a large enough percentage, generation by generation, removed a lot of that, because once that person is gone, they can't reproduce. And um, at the very least, at a certain point, people might not have a stomach for executions anymore. And I'm not saying that's the correct path, but I know, talking to the general population, talking to the average person, they don't really see an issue with castration, for example. You
Wow.
know,
To
a
me, that
severe
seems
enough.
even more extreme than hanging someone.
Um, and again, like, it's just a question of at what point do you actually say we're going to protect innocent people from these threats to society or not? And this isn't about, wanting to kill or cause any harm or anything like that, because again, the average liberal hears these kinds of discussions and they think, well, you just hate poor people, and whatever, you just want to get rid of everyone you don't like. But it's not really about, it's the bigger question is, what is there for the common good? How
Yeah.
can we ensure that we are protected against this? And now, obviously, the solution isn't just to let the problem sit there and then try and, okay, a weed pops up and we're just going to, constantly be attacking weeds and just let them grow and grow and grow. Because I don't think that is a full scope of for the solution. I think a lot of these problems, you can say you can fix them at the root cause by having a juster society, more justice in the first place, having a healthier society, and that comes from having stronger communities in the first place. But that's a whole larger topic that the liberal order does not have the answers to. It does not have the tools to fix those things. So
Hmm.
the question is, can this even provide protection from the roots of evil that have been allowed to spread
Right.
from that corruption,
What do you
right?
think about the theory that there's a certain element that, like the the high low theory or the anarcho tyranny? Do you think there's some deliberate element to them kind of using these people against us by, like, letting them all free?
Well, as far as I know, there is some aspect of it being like obviously a lot of these people just believe their own bullshit, right? People that are pushing like safe injection sites, for example,
Hmm.
um, and that's the only solution they have. Well, we don't want these people to get disease, but we'll just give them needles. But that doesn't, obviously, it doesn't address the core of the issue. But those kinds of people do believe their own bullshit. But some of these people understand the negative social effects, and when you there's the one aspect where you can't really, the average person can't really gain wealth. They can't really, that middle class is being destroyed. So there's that battle going on, and then there's obviously like the anarcho tyranny, where you have justice applied unevenly, uh, based on what benefits the power, the top of the power structure, right? And if you have people in disarray constantly, feeling like they can't even defend themselves, then they can't really provide much of a threat to the bigger power structures. So there's definitely something deliberate in the mix there. It's not entirely deliberate, but um, that like you can't ignore the fact that no one there. Well, I should say no one, but it's not like there's zero people that don't understand that there's negative effects in these policies surrounding the policing of um, violent crime, for example.
Yeah. Even the highest ups that, like, okay, I was watching this great video. I'm trying to find the channel that it's on. Wyatt Stagg. He made a video about George Carlin and George Carlin's sort of philosophy. And
Yeah.
it's just the most anti-white resentment you can have. So it strikes me that even if they're not deliberately doing it to maybe like keep us pacified or whatever so we don't rebel, they might be doing it just out of pure contempt. Like they're like, haha, yeah, go get those those rich white guys. Those,
Yeah, I mean, well, that goes back into that because we talked about Matt Parrott stuff before, and he has that
mhm.
what the dark triad of white
Right.
replacement, and one of those pillars is the
White
uh,
grudge? No,
yeah,
the
white grudge. So the
mhm.
grudge against white people as a perceived enemy by these elite classes, and it's even other white people, other liberal white people have this sort of grudge, and well, I mean, obviously, you see that like your example, George Carlin. So I think I think that plays a role in all of this, and then another aspect is I think the left is right when they say the prison system is generally just
Yeah.
bad in
That's why
itself.
I'm
Like,
for canings.
but there's a lot of people taking up space in the prisons so that you can't put these violent offenders in there for relatively speaking minor charges. I mean, again, there's still people taking up space for drug possession charges, and like even like people still get arrested for not paying tickets, and then they take up space. Like so, there's a lot of like just garbage like that that's taking space away from what we really need to be dealing with in like what really needs to be taking up space in the prisons. Um,
But here's
and
like,
that
even for a
like
certain class of violent crime, I'm not talking rape or murder necessarily, but say like
yeah.
assault, you send them to jail for a year. Uh, they get ripped, they make a bunch of friends, they come out with street cred, they get to tell their buddies all about their jail time. What if you just caned them? It takes an afternoon, but no one's gonna go bragging about that to their friends. You
Well,
know?
yeah, I mean, and then there's this notion, and actually, I think in the text we'll be reading next week, the Machiavellians, he actually makes a point on this, but um, like this notion of like the formal meaning versus the real meaning, um, and maybe even Foucault might talk about this when he talks about prisons, but like the removing of violent acts, um, as a sort of legitimate way to deal with human behavior in one regard or the other is again another way to serve the powerful. Actually, in his section, in Burnham's section of the Machiavellians on George Sorel, he talks about how Sorel, in Reflection on His Violence, makes that point that like the removal of violence from society is there more to protect the higher ups than it is to spread peace and love and you know
Hmm.
make a polite society, because what that really like he's talking about the workers' strike, right? And
Mm-hmm.
well, if you delegitimize violence as a means of resistance, well, then you can stop the workers from striking and getting what they want from their owners. If you say, well, you have to take another approach, you have to do this legalistic approach, well, that benefits the higher ups because they're the ones that can afford lawyers and they can talk their way through that. Um, so there's that whole element to it too, where they tell you that, well, hey, we just need we need a more civilized society without this barbaric actions. Um, but what that amounts to is, well, you don't really give the citizenry the option to address things properly, to serve justice, and you just give an easier access to uh, the means of control to the people that don't need to rely on violence themselves, or that have the tools of violence uh, only for them, like have the monopoly, you could say, on violence. And it's important to remember, like, talking about violence in this context is the Sorelian notion of violence, not like just mindless, attacking, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but that's a whole other thing that we can build on for the next episode. The takeaway here though is that we aren't given any sort of means to defend ourselves. The average person is now becoming worried and they want to know what to do. And I'm sure a lot of people over the next decade in particular are going to be looking for ways to organize themselves so that they can be in a position to have defense when
Right.
the state doesn't come in to help them against
Well,
these serious issues. So
I've
they'll be
al-
looking for security, even like
yeah,
right security forces and that kind of stuff.
I've always said the police are supposed to be our gang. Like as a what middle class white guy, police are supposed to be your gang. That's why we don't have gangs. The moment the police aren't our gang, well, do the math. Someone else is going to have to be.
That's right. So we'll. I mean, it's something to be wary of going forward, because even in the places like in Canada, where objectively speaking, it tends to be safer than many cities in America, it's coming here as well, and it's even as simple as the leniency surrounding your local crackheads and what they're allowed to get away with. Um, and you should have some ability to provide answers for people that are worried about this. Be a guy that they can look to for safety and reassurance.
Right, we can't say too much more about that. All right, let's move it on to the next topic. We'll be right back.
Sounds good.